Hello guys, welcome to Interchange 3, Unit 15. A law must be passed. In this unit, we are going to talk about giving opinions and recommendations using passive with modals should, ought to, have got to, and must. And also, we are going to see tag questions for opinions. Let's begin. Now, we are going to see some unusual laws. In Arizona, you may go to prison for 25 years if you cut down a saguaro cactus. In New Britain, Connecticut, fire trucks must travel at 25 miles per hour even when going to a fire. In the state of Washington, it is illegal to pretend your parents are rich. In Canada, 35% of the radio broadcasting time must have Canadian content. In Switzerland, it is an offense to hang clothes out to dry on Sunday. In Australia, it is illegal to walk on the right side of the footpath. It is against the law not to flush a public toilet in Singapore. In Finland, taxi drivers must pay royalties if they play music for their customers. A law prohibits unmarried women from parachuting on Sunday in Florida. In Switzerland, it's illegal to keep only one pet if it is a social animal. It's against the law to feed the pigeons in Venice. In some states in Australia, you may not leave the car keys inside an unattended vehicle. In the UK, women aren't allowed to eat chocolate on public transportation. Businesses must provide rails for tying up horses in Canada. Giving recommendations and opinions. You can use the passive with modals should, ought to, have got to, and must to give opinions and suggestions. For example, people should be required not to play music late at night. In the first example, we think it's a good idea to force people not to play music late at night. For the second one, girls in Afghanistan must be allowed to attend high school. In this case, we think it's important for the girls to go to school or to high school because nowadays they cannot do so. That's why we use must to say that it's important or an opinion we think it's a good idea for the girls to go. It's really important. You can use the passive with modals ought to and should to say something that you consider a good idea or recommendation. For this, you need an object, a modal verb. In this case, the modal can be ought to or should. Then you need be in the base form, which is be, the past participle of the verb, the infinitive, which is to plus a verb, and a complement. In this case, we have some examples of verbs that we can use. For example, allow, which is permitted, it's a synonym. Require, like forced, prohibited, like forbidden, or passed, like approved. So here we have some examples. Number one, a law should be passed to stop the use of animals for experiments. In this case, we think that a law has to be passed or approved to stop the use of animals for experiments. For the second one we have, the government ought to be required to provide free education. We think that the government has to be forced to provide free education for the citizens of the country. For the third one, we have teenagers shouldn't be permitted to work while they're in school. In this case, we consider that teenagers shouldn't work because if they work while they are in school, they might not have time to study. And the last one, people ought not to be allowed to use cell phones while driving. Remember that allowed is like permitted. So people shouldn't be permitted or people ought not to be permitted to use cell phones because if they use cell phones while they drive, they can have an accident. They can kill themselves or another person. In this case, we use ought to or should to express what we consider a good idea or good recommendation. You can use the passive with modals have to, have got to, and must to say something that you consider important or necessary. For this, you need an object plus a modal verb, in this case must, have to, or have got to, plus the verb be in the base form, which is be, the past participle of the verb, the infinitive, which is to plus the verb, and a complement. For example, teenagers mustn't be allowed to get married. Here we think it's really important or necessary not to allow or not to permit kids or teenagers to get married because they are not prepared to get married. That's why we use mustn't, because we think it's important not to let them get married. For the second one, something has got to be done to reduce water pollution. Something has got to be done or something must be done to reduce the contamination in rivers or in water that is killing a lot of people, a lot of fish too. Number 3, companies must be required to provide good working conditions. In this case, we think that it's really important or necessary to force companies to provide good working conditions for their workers or employees. And the last one, people have to be forced to clean the mess their pets make. When people walk their dogs or cats or any other pets that they have, and their pets make something on the grass or something on the floor, people must be forced to take that thing and put it in the wastebasket because they should be responsible for what their pets make. These are some community issues or some problems that affect communities. Bullying, the use of force, coercion, harmful teasing, or threat to abuse, aggressively, dominate, or intimidate. Homelessness, the situation of a person or family without stable, safe, permanent housing. Inadequate health care, not having good hospitals, enough doctors, or medicine to treat patients. Graffiti, writing or drawing on a wall or other surface in a public place. Vandalism, destruction or damage to public or private property. Irregular trash collection, trash or garbage not being picked or collected by trucks frequently. Lack of affordable childcare, not having enough cheap places to leave your kids to be taken care of while you work. Noise pollution, high sounds provoked by cars, airplanes, or loud music that affects humans and animals. Overcrowded classrooms, having many students in a classroom with not much space and only a teacher assigned. Stray animals, any animal that is lost, abandoned, unclaimed by any person, or wandering at large. Street crime, crimes such as vandalism, car theft, and mugging that are usually committed outdoors. Company outsourcing, when a company hires another company to provide a service, usually people in another country. This can happen because the company doesn't have the staff or machines to do the job or to reduce costs. This is a conversation between two people talking about the cost of living. Let's listen to them.
Page 103. Exercise 8. Conversation. It's not easy, is it? Part A. Listen and practice.
I need to find a new apartment. I can't stand the noise from all those bars and clubs in my neighborhood anymore.
I can imagine. But it isn't easy to find a nice apartment in a quiet neighborhood, is it?
No, it's not. And my rent is already sky high. I'm having a hard time making ends meet.
I know. Everything is really expensive nowadays, isn't it?
It sure is. You know, I'm looking for childcare for my baby, but I just can't find anything affordable in the area.
The city should provide free childcare to working families.
I think so too, but unfortunately the mayor doesn't.
Tag questions for opinions. Tag questions are common in spoken English. We usually use them to confirm information or someone's opinion. For example, traffic is terrible these days, isn't it? People shouldn't bully others, should they? In this case, a tag question is used because we want to confirm what another person thinks. This is our opinion, and then we invite the other person to confirm if they have the same opinion we do have. For this, you need a sentence in the first part, and then after that, you need a question, like this. Traffic is terrible these days. That is the sentence. Isn't it? That is a question. People shouldn't bully others. That is a sentence. Should they? That is a question. As we saw before, tag questions are used to confirm information or to invite another person to give his or her opinion. For this, remember that you need a sentence, a comma, and a question tag. Remember, the sentence is going to be usually a subject, a verb, and a complement, then the comma, and after the comma, the question tag. The question tag is going to be formed combining an auxiliary verb and a subject. For example, in this case, we have examples with the verb to be. Example number 1. Cell phones are a big distraction in schools, aren't they? In this case, the sentence is positive. That's why we use the auxiliary. The verb to be, here it's positive. So here you need the negative form of this one. Are, aren't. They, because we use cell phones. Cell phones is they. For the second one, the country's economy is not getting any better. Is it? In this case, the sentence it's negative because it says is not. Then here in the question tag, we are using the positive form. Is not, is. Then we're talking about the economy. The economy, it's it, because the economy is not a person and it's singular or uncountable. That's why we use it. The country's economy is not getting any better, is it? Then we have modal verbs. In this case, we have the modal can. For example, you can do many things to save the planet, can't you? In this case, the sentence is positive because you have can in the positive form. That's why here you use the negative form, can't. Then the subject is you, so here you repeat the same subject, you. You can do many things to save the planet, can't you? Here you have another example. Factories can't throw chemicals into the river, can they? In this case, the sentence is negative because we have can't. Then here the question tag is going to have can, the positive form. And factories are plural, so we use the subject they for factories. Remember, the economy is it because it's singular or uncountable. But factories is plural, so we use they. Factories can't throw chemicals into the river, can they? Number 3. Here we have examples with the simple present. Example number 1. People depend on technology a lot, don't they? In this case, we have a positive sentence with the simple present, so the auxiliary for the simple present is do. We also use does. But here it's positive, so we use the negative, don't, because the subject is they. Here, the subway doesn't contaminate a lot, does it? In this case, this is also a simple present sentence, but this one is negative. It has doesn't. So here we use the opposite. Here doesn't, then you use the positive form, does. Here, because this is positive, we use the negative. Positive, people depend on technology a lot. Negative, people don't depend on technology a lot. That's why we use don't here, because don't is the negative auxiliary that we use to convert this sentence into negative. The subway, it's singular. That's why we use it. And this is negative, we use the positive. The subway doesn't contaminate a lot, does it? Here we have an example with the modal verb will for the future. Example number 1. The president will work to find a solution. Won't he? In this case, the sentence is positive because it has will. And in this case, the president, it's a man, so we use he. If the president is a girl, we're going to use she. But since in this case, for this example, the president, it's a man, we're using he. Positive, will. Negative, won't. Next, contamination will not stop anytime soon. Will it? In this case, we have a negative sentence because we have will not. Then, here we use a positive, will. Contamination is uncountable, so we use the subject it that represents contamination. Contamination will not stop anytime soon, will it? Then we have examples with the modal should. For example, Maria should recycle those plastic bags. Shouldn't she? In this case, we have should and then the negative shouldn't. Maria is she. Maria should recycle those plastic bags. Shouldn't she? Nobody should burn their trash. Should they? In this case, we have nobody. That's why nobody is converting this sentence into negative, because we have nobody. Nobody makes the sentence negative. And since this is negative, we have to use the positive, should. Here we have negative because of nobody, then we use the positive, should. And since we say nobody, nobody can be a girl, a boy, we are not being specific. And that's why we use the subject they. Then we have the simple past. For example, the tree died because of the lack of water, didn't it? In this case, we have the tree. The tree is one, it's singular. That's why we use it. And since we have the verb died in the past, we use the auxiliary for the past. This sentence is positive. Then we use the auxiliary negative for the past, which is didn't. The next one, some tourists didn't come due to the crime. Did they? In this case, we have a negative sentence in the past because we have the auxiliary didn't. Then, since we have didn't, then here we need the positive, which is did for the past. And some tourists, it's plural, that's why we use they. Some tourists didn't come due to the crime, did they? The subject I and the verb to be. When we have the subject I, there are two situations. For example, I am a good person, aren't I? In the first example, here the first sentence is positive. That's why we have to use aren't for the negative. Then here, I am not contaminating the planet, am I? In this case, the first sentence is negative. And here we're going to use the positive for I am not, it's am. The subject is the same. In this case, for the positive, we have am. But for the negative, we don't have a contraction for I. Then we have to use aren't. Invitations with let's. When we use let's, we have to use shall we to finish. For example, let's create videos about the situation of the river. Shall we? For imperatives or orders, we use will and want, depending on the sentence. For example, help people who need food or clothes, won't you? In this case, the first sentence or imperative is positive. Then we use will in the negative form, won't. And the subject, it's going to be you, always. Then, don't play violent games with your kids, will you? In this case, this is a negative imperative, so you have to use will in the positive form, will you? And the subject, it's you again. And the last one is with there is or there are. For example, there are many cars in the streets, aren't there? There isn't much to do here, is there? So in this case, we have there are, the negative, aren't, and we use the same there. There isn't, negative, we use a positive, is. And then there again. Well guys, that was everything for today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.